enjoying it. Happy Friday, everyone. It's Dr. Bridget Young from babyformulaexpert.com here today for happy hour. Vaughn, I don't know how long he's going to be in here. We're in and out. Today, I want to make a big, it's not really an announcement, but something that's available now from Babies Only. And then I'm going to give you my 2 cents on the breastfeeding study that is all over the news lately. To introduce myself, I'm Bridget Young. I'm a doctor of perinatal nutrition and a certified lactation counselor and founder of babyformulaexpert.com. And so I've been doing happy hour every Friday to get to know you guys and as a way for me to be able to answer, that lasted a hot 5 seconds, questions that I get from parents all the time about anything related to infant feeding. Oh, sorry as I deal with this. Honey, be careful. You don't want to fall. So first, before we talk about the study, I wanted to give an announcement that Babies Only has come out with a new formula that's kind of exciting. So I'm a pretty big fan of their Whey formula, so the Babies Only Whey formula. And recently, I want to make sure I don't mess this up here. Yeah, they just released online a Babies Only Whey formula with DHA and ARA. And I love this for 2 reasons. One, I love when there's DHA and ARA in formula. And 2, excuse me, Petey, it's okay. Vaughn, you don't have to bother him. Wait. 2, Babies Only is the only formula, to my knowledge, that is available in the U.S. that provides DHA and ARA from a non-hexane extraction process. So they actually provide these fatty acids from an egg phospholipid source. So you see it on the ingredients as egg lecithin or egg yolk lecithin? Egg lecithin, I wrote it down. So that's really exciting. 1, because now if you use that formula, you don't have to add in your own DHA and ARA. And 2, it's a great option if you think your baby is having a sensitivity or a reaction to some of the single cell oils that the rest of formulas use. So I just love having more options. So that's really exciting. I do want to point out that their DHA and ARA is a little less than most of the other formulas on the market. It's in the same ratio, but for 100 calories, for example, Babies Only will have 6.25 milligrams of DHA and 12.5, so twice, the amount of ARA. And for reference, Gerber and most other brands will have 10 milligrams of DHA and 20 milligrams of ARA. So not quite double, but almost. The range in breast milk is enormous, so there's no way to really know what's ideal, but just if you're really interested in this news, keep that in mind that if you're adding a supplement at home, the amount in the formula may not be as much as you had been adding, but is still going to be a healthy amount for your baby. And as a bonus, you can only get it online right now on their website, but it is on sale right now, $13.99 a can, whereas the plain Whey version without the DHA is $14.99 a can. So I have no affiliation with Babies Only. I just really like when we have new options available. And if you want to try this, it's always nice to save a little money. Okay, let's move on to, oh, they're sharing. Oh my God, it's happening. Thank you, Petey. That was very kind. It is a party with just the babies and me, so ignore the noise. There's really nothing I can do about it. Thank you for tolerating. So I am sure you guys have seen a story. It's been all over the news. It's gotten so much press. If one of my research studies could get this much press, I could retire. All over the news, this story about breastfeeding and cognitive outcomes in children at 3 and 5 years of age. It just kind of went viral. So the study is actually called Breastfeeding Cognitive and Non-Cognitive Development in Early Childhood, a population study. And it was just published this month in Pediatrics, which for those of you who are not nerds is a hell of a journal. It is one of my life goals to publish a first author publication in Pediatrics. I have not gotten there yet. It is the primary publication of the American Academy of Pediatrics. So in short, it's no joke. Only really good research gets in there. So I'll give you the punchline, what everyone is reporting, and then I'm going to try to go through it quickly so that you can hobnob about it with all your mommy friends and sound very informed. And what I really want to say at the end are some points that I take home from the research that no one else is talking about that is getting me on my soapbox. So if you had to sum up the study in one sentence, it would be that in 13 measures of cognitive development in young children, ages 3 to 5, only one was significantly associated with breastfeeding. So only one measure of improved cognition in these babies, and that this effect went away at 5 years. And now, in the abstract, which is a little summary in the beginning of every scientific paper, please don't touch the tripod, thank you. The last sentence reads, and I quote the last clause of the sentence, suggesting that the earlier observed benefit from breastfeeding may not be maintained. Which is a fair statement. They mean the earlier benefit of the things they studied. But this sentence has gone like viral, and I've seen lots of really oh boy, Vaughn, no honey, you can't do that. Come on. I've seen a lot of miscommunicated headlines of benefits of breastfeeding not maintained. And I'm like, cue my Donald Trump impersonation of like, the media cannot be trusted. The worst impression of all time. So definitely taken out of context and sensationalized, but that's the media's job. So I've had tons of emails from colleagues being like, what do you think about this? Are you concerned about the misreporting? My answer is no. Every 3 years this happens. Some paper gets a lot of press, it's misreported, it blows over. But here, I want you guys to be able to know what this study showed because it's important and to be able to talk about it. And mostly I want you to understand the crux of all breastfeeding research, which I conduct, so I suffer from this, so that you can interpret these headlines in the future with a little bit of caution. So here's the problem with breastfeeding research. All breastfeeding research suffers from what we call self-selection bias, which leads to significant confounding. Now, those are very nerdy epidemiological terms that just mean that in the real world, people self-select to breastfeed or formula feed. And the reasons you choose that are related to other factors. For example, try another word, please. For example, in the US, we know breastfeeding mothers are more likely to be white, older. I'm so sorry, Petey, just choose a different toy. Here. Breastfeeding moms are more likely to be white, older, more educated, have more support, did I forget one? Anyway, basically a lot of things that are also more likely to produce babies with more opportunities. I'm so sorry about the noise. And that's the biggest problem in breastfeeding research. It's really hard to look at child outcomes and say that outcome is because that baby is breastfed. Whereas it could just as easily be because that baby is from a privileged family, you know, had other healthy behaviors in the house, that kind of a thing. So that's a big problem. The gold standard in clinical or epidemiological research is called a randomized controlled trial. This is really easy to do with pharmaceuticals. Like, you take a cancer, you give one group a new drug, you give another group the old drug, and then you look and see, did the new drug make a difference? Sorry to get really morbid on you there, but that's a simple question to ask. You can't do that in breastfeeding because when a baby's born, you can't say you will breastfeed, you will formula feed. It's clearly, that's unethical. It's up to the mother. So we're stuck in research with all these different funky kinds of things we try to do statistically to control for these confounding factors, which are things that are related to breastfeeding, like mom's education, her race, her support, that kind of a thing. So the reason this study is published in Pediatrics, why it's a great study and why it should be getting press, is that they use kind of a cool technique to try to get at this problem. And it's called propensity score matching. You don't need to know that. The punchline is they take a baby who's breastfed and they match to a baby who wasn't breastfed but whose mom has the same amount of education, whose family has the same income, you know, there's a father in both homes. So they try to control for all these other things that might be causing an effect. So we can't randomize babies to breastfeed, but this is one of the ways we can try to get at if it's breast milk that's causing some of the benefits that they're looking at. And the study had a whopping 8,000 kiddos, which is huge. So every time you have a bigger study, you're much more likely to be able to find significant results that can inform what we know. Hey, Laura. Mwah! So, propensity score matching, that is what they did. And then you can see why. You don't have to read the story of the study, this is it, but I'm going to tell you. Look at table 1 in every study is always what? Ooh, it's like a Gollum yell there. Oh, excuse you. What the population looked like. And sure enough, they have it split by mothers who breastfed their babies and didn't. And sure enough, oh my Lord in heaven, Petey, honey, you got to try to control. Take a deep breath. Okay. Okay, well, you don't have to play with that. So sorry. The babies that were breastfed, the moms were more likely to have a partner in the home helping, have a skilled profession as opposed to an unskilled profession. They were older, more educated, and more likely to have a vaginal delivery. So, like I said, basically, like, these kids are much more set up for biological success than the other kids. So, thus, it's a really big deal to try to control for some of these things, which they did. So next, they took all the babies that were breastfed and split them into 3 groups. Babies that were breastfed for the first month of life only. Honey, you gotta try. I'm really sorry. You're gonna have to try to get along. Just for another couple minutes. Holy moly. Oh, Petey. Here you go. Okay, how about you just join me for a minute? You don't want to join me? Okay. This is going to take forever. I will try to talk fast. Thank you so much for your patience. So they took the babies and split them into 3 groups by how long they were breastfed. The first month of life, 1 to 6 months, and then 6 months or beyond, which is actually the recommendation. And then within that group, they matched the babies to a baby who wasn't breastfed at all, but had the same categories of those things I just mentioned that were different. I'm with you, Petey. It's been a rough day. I tell ya, sharing is a B. Anyway, so once they matched, they looked at a total of 13 outcomes, all kind of related to cognition. So problem solving, vocabulary, toddler conduct. Oh, my kids don't have this test. Hyperactivity and difficulties at 3 years and 5 years of age. So it's not IQ, it's this loose measure of cognitive development. And then here is what's getting so much press. If you take these 13 measures in all these 3 groups and all you do is look at the breastfed babies versus not, that's 13 times 3 is 39, right? Yeah, 30 out of the 39 comparisons showed that breastfeeding was associated with better outcomes. That's before the matching, just group to group. The kicker, what is getting so much press, is if you match, so you take away all those other factors that might be different between breastfed babies, if you control for those, only one out of the 39 comparisons remained significant. And it showed that babies who were breastfed for at minimum 6 months, so the largest amount of breastfeeding, had lower hyperactivity at 3 years of age, according to parents. And then by 5 years of age, the difference was gone. The babies had recovered. They went to school, learned how to share. Okay. And it was done. So that's what is getting so much press. And everybody's basically saying, so it doesn't matter. Breastfeeding doesn't matter at all. Oh my God. My boys are wild down here. Vaughn, you can't be so wild. That's that polite. So the question is, does it matter? And the answer is, if you're just talking about if this small difference in hyperactivity only at 3 years, no, it doesn't matter because it went away at 5 years of age. But what people are all forgetting to bring up in a lot of these news reports is IQ, cognition is kind of a controversial thing with breastfeeding. Clearly research shows yes or no. The reason that it's universally recommended to breastfeed by the WHO and the AAP is for the infectious protection benefits. This is particularly relevant for preemie babies who are underdeveloped or for infants in third world countries where malnutrition and diarrhea are the biggest killers of children and cause really high neonatal mortality rates. So nobody's going to argue with that. No one's ever going to tell you you should breastfeed because your baby might be slightly less hyperactive at 3 years of age, or they shouldn't. That's not one of the reasons that we recognize that breastfeeding may be better. So this whole conversation to me is a little out of the blue. I I don't even know what else to say about it. It's not out of the blue, it's a good research study, but I have no idea why it's getting so much press. Now I want to point out two things that I haven't seen anyone talk about, but are take-homes to me that are a really big deal. The one is that this study, and really every other breastfeeding study, just looks at two groups, breastfed and not breastfed, whereas I have built an entire website and a lot of my career around the fact that all formula, oh Vaughn, that was not nice, honey. PD, I'm sorry, he knocked over your tower. All formula is not the same. So when you're just comparing a group of breastfed and they didn't match on that, you can't really. I understand it's a huge undertaking to try to control for the type of formula. So I'm not trying to tear these authors a new one. It's a great study, but there wasn't even a mention of formula in the discussion, giving nod to the fact that breastfeeding is self-selected, but formula feeding is as well. Parents choose different types. They may change. Babies may have different reactions, and that's never even addressed. And part of that is that we always compare different studies. You know, and they talk about one study found that it was associated with IQ, another one wasn't. A big study, you guys really don't need to know this, was called the Probit trial, and it was a randomized intervention trial in hospitals to have a breastfeeding intervention versus not, and then they compared the children as a means to try to look at randomization. And they did find a difference in IQ. And this keeps coming up. However, that study studied babies born between 1996, I wrote it down so I remember, 1996 and 1997 in Belarus. I shudder to think what the babies who weren't breastfed were fed. They definitely weren't fed the standard of formula that we have available today. So it's not really shocking to me that those babies may have had a little bit worse outcomes. So, oh, thank you for these nice comments. I'm like an old woman who can barely read the comments and hold her train of thought. And this is never brought up, never in the individual studies, nor in the comparison when people talk about comparing different types of breastfeeding studies between each other. That formula is constantly changing. I just updated my articles from a year and a half ago, and there's so many new formulas on the market and so many changes in what's in them. So that was what really bothers me too, is that even when studies find a difference between breast and formula feeding, they lump all the babies in the formula group together, which doesn't give formula feeding parents any idea of if they should be changing their regimen. So this is really getting me on my soapbox a little bit to continue this conversation of informing research to look into these kinds of things and also to consider them when interpreting their results. And the last, we had a tower knocked over again. Vaughn, honey, you must try not to be so aggressive. There, I handled it. It'll never happen again. The last thing that is really important to me is I've had several people, like I said, oh, Vaughn, honey, that is not okay. The reason this study is getting so much press, like I said, is because it's controversial. But underlying that is why. Why is this study controversial? Like I said, if it was the study of, 5th graders, there's no difference in their test scores, whether they had bologna or peanut butter for lunch, is kind of sort of what it's saying. It's just comparing two diets and finding no difference in effect in something that wasn't really expected to be different necessarily. The reason it's controversial, nobody has pointed out, is that clearly we're still having feeding shaming happening in this country. It's coming from both sides. Parents who breastfeed and parents who formula feed face people who judge their decision either way. And that is just unacceptable. Again, nobody gives a hoot if you give your kid bologna or peanut butter once they're in 3rd grade, but apparently what you put in your baby's bottle is everybody's business. And so that is also getting me on my soapbox. Nobody, let me rephrase. Everybody just wants a healthy baby. And I think that's where we should all be able to come together. And once it stops being a controversial issue, the research can just inform medical recommendations, which is all they're trying to do in the first place. So thank you for watching. Thank you so much for putting up with my precious children who are actually playing very nicely right now. This is the toy nook, so I always do it here when I can because there's lots of toys, but of course there's only ever one toy that both of them want at the same time. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helps. I hope it also gives you an idea of the problems that we face doing breastfeeding research, which of course I think is very important to do. And the next time there's a sensational headline, you'll have an idea about how to think about the research from an academic standpoint. Oh, thanks, Laura. Mwah. So yes, I love all of your babies. Whatever you're feeding your baby, if it's resulting in a healthy baby, then it's the right choice. Okay, it's clearly time to go. If you want to work with me personally, without my children screaming, you can head over to babyformulaexpert.com, and there is a work with me tab there. And I've been having fun setting up free 15-minute consultations with families who need a little bit of help finding a good feeding regimen and plan for their little one. And I would love to work with you. So you guys have a wonderful week. We will all be back next week. I'm sure you can't wait. Okay, talk to you guys then. Bye.